Colonies in space are amazing things. Scientists have came up with some ideas to live in the clouds of numerous planets and moons. Would you want to be on a moon? I wouldn't unless there's Netflix. Anyway, living on the surface of Venus would be like building a home in the pits of hell, full of demons and funness. Temperatures would boil your skin. Atmosphere would crush you as tightly as the depths of the ocean, and quick mists of sulfuric acid would fill the air. Sounds quite pleasurable. And yet, despite all that, some scientists think that Venus just might be the best place we could set up a colony. It seems counterintuitive, but as hellish as Venus is on the surface, it's surprisingly comfortable as long as you don't touch the ground. Sort of like the games you'd play as a child. Don't touch the ground, because it's lava. So, if you fell out of a Venus balloon, it'd be like lava. How fun. At 50 kilometers or 30 miles high up in the sky, Venus is one of the best places to live in the solar system. Some scientists want to build floating cities right at the top of Venus clouds. They would be self-enclosed habitats filled with breathable air and lifted up by gigantic balloons. In the Venus cloud city, life would be a lot like Earth. The gravity would be almost identical. The atmosphere would keep us safe from solar radiation. Bonus, even the temperatures wouldn't be too bad. Nights would drop to 0 degrees, or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, while the 117 Earth Day long days would get up to 50 degrees Celsius, or 122 degrees Fahrenheit. You definitely sweat, but you wouldn't boil alive, so you wouldn't have to work out long while you're in Venus clouds. There's no reason that we have to be limited to live on planets. Some scientists believe that we are overlooking a possibility home that's all over our solar system. Asteroids. They might be the perfect place to set up the mining colonies of the future. Most of these giant rocks floating around in outer space are filled with elements like plutonium. On an asteroid, you can mine as much as you want because you don't have to care for a lick of its environment. Imagine all the diamonds you have. You can give your wife a 50-carat diamond, or a platinum one. The idea is set up a space station around the asteroid and fill it with its staff and mining equipment. Workers on the space station would slowly extract everything that they could until the asteroid is completely hollowed out. Inside the hollowed out core of the asteroid, a new colony would be set up. They would be able to extract water and oxygen from the asteroid itself, so the colony should be fairly self-sustaining in theory. And since they'd be living underground, they'd be protected from the elements of space. How beautiful. You could be a miner on a wish of an asteroid. Europa is one of the moons of Jupiter. It's covered in a thick layer of ice. No matter how cool it may be, nobody knows exactly what lies under the surface. That's the reason to believe that a whole ocean is waiting to be discovered if we could just make it through the ice itself. In theory, that wouldn't be impossible. It is actually might be a decent place to live. The surface of Europa is bombarded with radiation, not just from the sun but from Jupiter itself. Under the ice, though, we would be safe from the radiation. It might even thrive with life itself. The plan is to put a heated drill on the tip of the submarine and bore right into the ice. When the submarine gets through it, it will drop the drill and start exploring the oceans of Europa. In theory, there should be a few places with pockets of air separating the ice and water. There we could set up floating communities and start filling the underground oceans of Europa with life. Would you want to live underwater? I don't know if I would, but we go on. Obvious place to colonize is the moon. NASA has been talking about setting up moon bases for years. Originally, they wanted to build their bases in the underground caves that fill our moon. But today, NASA is considering a new idea. They want to put their colonies on wheels, sort of like pump your ride with the moon. Moon colonies need to be mobile because nighttime usually lasts about 14 days on the moon. Such a long night can get cold as well, and it makes it impossible to use solar power to keep those things running. At the poles of the moon, even though it's almost always day, that means that NASA would be able to cover a moon base with solar panels and get a nearly constant source of power. If the moon base could rove around, to say the least, it'd be able to change its location from the sun and always keep it out of the cold. That would also let the colonists go on exploration missions or set up mines on different parts of the moon, find cheese and whatnot, because it's the moon. The Bernal Sphere is an idea for a self-sustaining space station, complete with farms, livestock, and entertainment. Not sure about Netflix, but the space station would be surrounded by rings that are constantly rotating at incredible speeds. The rings would have different purposes, of course, with some being used to grow crops, some being used to take care of animals as well. And they also stay in place because the rotation would create an Earth-like gravity inside itself. Geniuses. That gravity, though, would follow some weird rules. For one thing, the center of the station would be a sphere, and you'd be on the inside. That means that the landscape ahead of what you would curve up instead of down like it does on Earth. So if you looked up, you'd see a bird's eye view of the people on the other side of the sphere. Gravity would be weaker on the center of the sphere than on the edges. In the middle, it would be so weak that you'd be able to fly. Quite fun if you want to be Superman or Superwoman. That's something that designers considered, and they think it could be a good thing. They believe that they could add a little fun to life in space by setting up a zero-gravity honeymoon suite right in the middle of the sphere. Imagine sex with zero gravity. Imaginable. Quite heavenly. The planet closest to the sun isn't the most obvious place to colonize. For one thing, it's incredibly hot. Not in the way that you would like it on an Instagram photo. No, it's just close to the sun. Temperatures during the day can get as high as 427 degrees Celsius, or 800 degrees Fahrenheit. And the planet rotates so slowly that the days are long as 176 days here on Earth. Those days that are long, though, might actually be a good thing. Mercury rotates so slowly that, theoretically, a city on wheels could keep it up with it. If a mobile city on Mercury kept moving, it could keep itself right on the edge of sunlight, where the temperatures aren't much different from those on Earth. Fascinating idea. The mobile city would have to be in pressurized enclosure, of course, but it might be actually livable. As long as the mobile city stayed on the northern side of the planet, it would be able to find craters full of frozen water. It could then pump the water into enclosure to create water vapor, which would turn into oxygen through a process called photolysis. This would create a self-sustaining breathable atmosphere on the closest planet to the sun. Now my question would be, what happens when energy runs out? You'd probably get stuck and burn alive, so I'd rather be on Venus, I suppose. Anyway, Titan, one of the Saturn's moons, is a strange place, very odd and peculiar. It's the Harry Houdini of the universe. Methane rains from the skies and forms into Great Lakes, and the gravity is so weak that you could just strap on a pair of wings and flap your arms, and fly around the planet or moon, whatever Titan is. It also might be the perfect place to set up a human colony, not just because of the flying thing. One of the biggest threats about living in our outer space is the radiation from cosmic rays. There is no place in the solar system that's safer from cosmic rays than Titan. You go Titan. Titan's atmosphere has more nitrogen, which helps block cosmic rays, than Earth does. Unlike Earth, though, Titan gets extra protection from Saturn's magnetosphere. So if we could find a way to survive on its surface, it would actually be one of the safer places to live. There would be benefits to it as well. Lakes of methane and ethane that fill Titan are great sources of energy as well. Not only would those fuels be useful back on Earth, but they could be used to keep things running in habitats inside plastic domes as well, inflated by warm oxygen and nitrogen. It just might be the future. Camps full of people sucking up the methane lakes of Titan. Sounds delicious. And since the gravity would be 14% that of the Earth, they'd be able to get a lot of the heavy lifting done without even breaking a sweat. So if you had a lot of weight on you, don't worry, there'll probably be a lot of McDonald's on Titan, because you'll be light as air. Hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is a dwarf planet called Ceres. At its core, it's a great big rock floating in space, but on the surface it's covered in a thick layer of ice, which means that it has water, and that water could be said to support life itself. There's a reason to believe that Ceres has an ocean of liquid water underneath its frozen surface, but it'd be pretty far down. The mantle of ice around Ceres is believed to be about 100 kilometers, or 60 miles thick. That is very thick, which would be hard to cut through. Melting it, though, might not be out of the question. Even if the idea sounds a little crazy, some scientists want to put a huge mirror in orbit around Ceres to put focus on the light of the sun on the surface. They're hoping that extra light would get the temperature between the usual high of negative 73 degrees Celsius or negative 99 degrees Fahrenheit into something hot enough to thaw out the ice. If it works, the water vapor rising off the ocean should create oxygen. When it creates it in contact with the radiation from the sun, in theory, they should make it possible to set up floating and domed cities at the melted surface on the planet. Fascinating. Uranus, not your booty hole, isn't the closest planet to us, but we've still thought about colonizing it. That's because Uranus is full of helium-3, a gas that we've almost completely depleted on Earth. As hard as it may seem to reach Uranus, we might not have any choice. Jupiter and Saturn have plenty of helium-3 as well, but they would both be almost impossible to colonize, since they have a lot of gas. Also, Jupiter's gravity is too intense to survive. Saturn's rings shower its surface with a constant hail of meteors. Compared to those two choices, Uranus would actually be fairly easy to colonize. The plan to put a hot air balloon in the planet's gassy atmosphere. From there, we'd be able to suck up the gases and send them to space stations in orbit around the planet. It would be dangerous, a little bit. I mean, who doesn't want to go skydiving nowadays? You can just go to Uranus, or go to the bathroom. There's Uranus. Anyway, with the jokes. Massive storms travel around the planet, and if you do colonize every failed to get out of one's path, they'd be torn to shreds. We get an incredible source of fuel, though. That might have enough power to give our entire planet tons of energized batteries. Operations to colonize Mars are underway, with SpaceX has already outlined their plans to set up a transport system that sends our fleet of ships to Mars and back in once in every 26 months. They haven't been too open about what those colonies would actually look like. All Elon Musk has really shared about these Mars cities is that it would be covered in glass domes. It just might look like the plan from a team at MIT was called the Redwood Forest. Their idea is to litter the planet with glass domes connected by a network of underground tunnels that would work just like tree roots. The tunnels would tap into underground water and soil and send it to the domes. Inside the domes, some of the water would be vaporized to create oxygen and supply habitable forms of farms. The water would also fill the cells on the outside of the dome, protecting the people inside from solar radiation. It's an idea that should work, and it's one that we might see in our lifetime, of course. Hopefully, if SpaceX plans work out, we can expect to see colonies on Mars pretty soon. They've claimed that they will be able to get 1 million people living on Mars within the next 50 to 100 years. So you just might end up retiring on the redwood forests of Mars. Quite exhilarating. Is there a planet or moon that you would like to exhibit yourself? I think the moon would be pretty cool. Then you could look at Earth, or Titan as well. Who doesn't want the word Titan on their passport? Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subs. Have a great one. Bye.